everyone, to another episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, Pete. Thanks. Good to see you. I'm in sweltering south of the states in Houston, and it is a meltdown here. Total.
That's a hot place. I grew up in Florida, and I did a project one time in Houston, and the humidity is not to be toyed with. You should enjoy though the underground tunnels they have there in downtown. I don't know if you're near downtown, but underground, fantastic tunnels. And there's an amazing world of food and just different things under that underground that you can escape the heat and have a good time. So
yeah, exactly.
Enjoy that.
Well, this year more than any, it is a heat wave.
Yes.
I can attest.
Yes. And I am very excited this week to also welcome to our show one of my good friends, one of my clients, a leader that I admire and have worked with for a number of years now, the founder and CEO of global payroll technology provider Payslip, Miss Fidelma McGuirk. Welcome, Fidelma.
Hi, Pete. Great to be here with you and Julie. Thanks very much for inviting me onto the podcast today. And yeah, I've been reading your materials for many years, long before we started meeting at the APA Congress. So really good to meet you on this podcast with Julie as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have you because we, myself, my firm, GxT Advisors, and Payslip have teamed up with the PayrollOrg. And we've recently put out a global payroll survey that really quick read, but some great insights into what the practitioners are thinking, some of their sentiment around what's going on in the payroll world, and just some great findings. So I'm excited to dive into that with you after the news here. But maybe you could just tell us, I always love to ask this, but tell us a little bit about your role. Tell us a little bit about Payslip and what on earth brought you to the world of global payroll to begin with, and how come you stay? How come you stay in it?
Yeah, sure. So it's always an exciting backstory. And I know at the PayrollOrg conferences, there's a joke nearly every year by somebody saying they fell into payroll. So
Yes.
It's a very valid question for the industry of payroll. And I'm sure you and Julie both have your own stories. So in my backstory is that up to 2015, I worked for an international tax firm. And I went over a period of 15 years from project manager to international director of operations to CEO. And during that time, I grew the organization across 21 countries and we had thousands of employees. And like all companies, when you grow into a new country, you're going there for talent acquisition or for supply chain or a market entry strategy. So the payroll is very much a business process which is set up nearly as a lagging process after you've organized your corporate tax structure, all your transfer pricing, or all of your employment contracts. And what I found after a period of time was we had these payrolls actively running across 21 countries, and it was near impossible to identify, how payroll was running in a standardized way. There was no single way to know what was going to be on time, where the choke points were, which vendors were delivering well, or whether we internally could improve our process. And when I looked into the market for what solutions were available, all the solutions were very services-based solutions to provide in-country payroll services, either country by country or multi-country, like the managed service providers. So I left that company in 2015 and registered Payslip in 2016 and did a huge amount of work and research, including at the PayrollOrg conferences and also at some of the training programs. I did the global certification for global payroll as well in San Francisco with PayrollOrg, or APA as it was then. And really, I came to the conclusion across all the multinational companies that I spoke to that they had really good, robust, mature cloud technology available to them for their HR management, like Workday or like SAP SuccessFactors. They had really similarly robust software available for their financial management, such as Workday Financials. But there was a gap in the middle, really, for having a software available off the shelf to standardize and harmonize global payroll management. And so that's what I decided to do. I had experience in my previous life building our own software internally for our own operations and also for some of our tax products. And we'd gone to market with those. And as a result, I decided to set up Payslip in 2016.
Yes, very cool. And, it's hard to believe that category of solution wasn't there, right? I know we've talked about that a bit. So
that's right.
It's good stuff. I love what you guys are doing. And I was just talking to someone before this about how one of the things I'm noticing is that the SaaS model, the technology model, is getting into deals with managed services and winning, right? And I think there's a bit of a agility to that and a speed to that, and also just an ability to also complement what existing investments and capabilities that a firm already has versus maybe saying, hey, we can completely replace everything, right? We can really more or less enhance you and bring you to a greater level. So I really love it.
I don't think they need to be mutually exclusive. And I think initially when we came to market in Payslip in 2017, it was a new concept for people. And we invested a lot in education that, global payroll was a process that needed to be managed, and vendor choice and services choice was part of the global payroll management solution. It didn't have to dictate the entire strategy for how to manage global payroll. And we see that with our clients in Payslip. We have built the global payroll control platform to automate and harmonize the operations. And we've also built our integration as a service to be able to integrate with any service provider or HCM in the tech stack. And so we have clients, for example, who are committed to continuing to use, for example, ADP Streamline as their service provision, but they recognize that there's a lot of calculation work to be done in payroll management and post-calculation work to be done in payroll management into the accounting colleagues or even from the HR colleagues. And so they use Payslip to standardize the global payroll management operation. And then we use our integration tools to integrate out with ADP Streamline in that example. And so we have clients on using the Big Four, using other accountancy firms around the world like Deloitte or BDO. And it's not mutually exclusive. It's actually all becomes a larger tech stack in the company. And then we can harmonize in all the service providers, not just the payroll ones, but also the benefits providers, the stock service providers, the global mobility service providers.
Yeah, global payroll really is an orchestration. If I had to put it into one word, but no, it's good stuff. It sounds exciting. I want to get into it more as we talk about this survey. But Fidelma, why do you stay in payroll? What keeps you there?
Well, I think it's really exciting that I had this idea to set up a software and that there was none in the market. And when we see our clients like, phenomenal US technology companies like Databricks or GoTo or Cloudera, or even pharma companies, law firms like Intuitive Surgical, the core problems that we solve are horizontal across all of the different industries. And our global payroll users, whether they are in a centralized team or in a shared services team, they all sing about the benefits and how we have helped reduce pay cycle times, reduce payroll errors, reduce manual work to practically nothing. And that feedback is extremely rewarding, and it also challenges us in Payslip to find more and more ways in which we can use our automation and AI tools to deliver more value to the global payroll people who are phenomenal in what they do and really deserve first citizen technology.
Yeah, absolutely. We all do, right? We all deserve that modern, world-class capability in our hands. We've got it in our pockets at home. Why not? Right.
Exactly.
I love it. And I think that's, I think there's a lot of people that stay around payroll for that challenge, right? The fact that it isn't easy and not everyone can do it. It's hard. And I love that you guys are out there trying to solve some of that. So good stuff. Okay. So, look, as you know, or may not know, Fidelma, we do some news here, talk a little bit about the market, what's going on with some of the solutions around the place. So Julie, I know you've got some news in the benefits world. What's going on over there?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned some news that came out a week or so ago from TELUS Health. And for those who may not follow closely kind of how the benefits providers have been shaking out over the years, Mercer back quite a while ago sold off a lot of their health and welfare business. It's not the part that they sold off more recently, the remainder, but that business then went to Morneau Chappelle and that went to TELUS Health. And what caught my attention in the last week or so is that TELUS has just announced that they're cutting about 6,000 jobs.
Ooh.
Now, that's not uniquely in that Ben admin space, but I do think it's affecting some of the contact centers activity and leadership, some leadership layer. And there just appears to be making a little bit of an effort to right size. So figured that was newsworthy, and some folks might use TELUS and might want to be aware of that.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And thanks for that. It's, it's an important world, right? Benefits. We've talked about that before, about how it's really becoming very, very important that firms get that right. And, like everything, the marketplace, I think, is having some convergence here and there.
Yeah. And then we're going to share a couple from some of our more usual suspects, right, on the radar.
Yeah. A couple of very quiet things happened. One, Ceridian unbundled their managed services, right, with new tiers. So now you can kind of take things from processing all the way up to fully managed. They're doing that under a standard, select, and signature level. I think it's great. I think it's indicative of the type of flexibility that the market has offered. This is a little late, to be honest with you. I feel like 3 to 4 years ago, most of the major providers had already done this. So a little late, a little bit of a catch up, but I think it gives Ceridian users, Dayforce users, a bit more options when it comes to how they want to adopt their services from Ceridian, which we know has been fueled by many acquisitions and certainly, doing well, right? They picked up a couple of really cool things in Ascender and Excelity, and sharpened their capabilities globally. So making payroll a lot more flexible for adoption there. The other one is ADP acquired a very quiet, low-code intelligent workflow platform, automation platform called Sora. They were a partner of ADP's. And I think that part of that is just indicative of, look, ADP's got a massive portfolio of stuff. They've got to bring all those things together. They're working with every major platform out there, I would say. And so they've got to integrate a lot of things, right? And I think this is just a step in the direction of the type of open, extensible, low code environment that they've designed. Do you think, Fidelma, that global payroll platforms are to some extent becoming integrations as a service in some ways?
I think they're two separate things, right?
Yeah.
So so in Payslip, we frame it that we have a global payroll control platform,
Yeah.
and its purpose is to harmonize the data vertically and to harmonize the process horizontally, if you can imagine it like that. And because we've done that, then it automates the calendar, the communications, the data exchange, lots of good things around that, and it produces the dashboards and all the reporting. The integration as a service places that platform into the broader ecosystem that a customer has. So the customer always has a complex tech stack. They have the internal tech stack, which is usually their HCMs and their ERPs, at least for HR and finance. But we've never met one multinational company ever yet who has all of their pre-payroll data in their HCM. They still always have very local driven data or some very like stock driven data or commissions data in a different kind of system. So the integration as a service tools are very important for pre-payroll automation, and they can't be only limited to the HCMs. So what we see, and then the same for the post-payroll out to accounting, there are not only accounting softwares waiting internally in the ecosystem. There's also the banking, there's also the payslips, there's also tax documents, and there's also all the benefits providers. So integration as a service what should it look like? It should look like a set of tools that the platform provider has built that are flexible and give configuration solutions for integration instead of build solutions. So currently we have that in Payslip because that's what we've built over the last 7 years, and our customers are testifying to every day. What I see in the market is that the managed service providers are really good at providing what they do, which is a managed service. And they have all built some level of a platform over the last 10 years, but mostly to exchange data and documents in one direction and then on the reverse. But managed service providers aren't technology firms really at their core, so they don't usually build what I would call the plumbing system. So you can enter the front door, you can take the reports out the front door or the back door, but actually in the middle, the plumbing is where the data has to come into a team, be configured, moved around, move over to the payroll providers automatically, come back, be validated automatically. All of that plumbing system of the data consolidation and standardization, that plumbing system isn't inherent in managed service provider platforms, and they have people to shore that up, which is fine if that's the model that you want. but most platforms are kind of data and document exchange platforms. And then they usually, the managed service providers have invested in good tools for integration for Workday, for example, or SuccessFactors, but they don't necessarily have the tools for all of the other myriad of apps that employers use. And really, there's so many apps now for HR. There's a lot. So I think it's going that direction broadly, but I would think that we're the only one in the Gartner category, so we're the only one there at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? There's a lot of so many apps are being used. I mean, I don't know what the average is now, but you're right. There's a massive amount of apps, and I think that's a big part of this play here is trying to bring all of that data and information together. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how, I love the open nature of things today, right? The APIs and the connectivity. It's really creating a lot of opportunity in other ways that we could probably go into, but okay, so let's go ahead.
Just to answer that, Pete, while we're on it, about saying how many we would see across companies that have more than, say, 4,000 people outside of the US. So that means they probably usually have about 8 to 12,000 at least in the US. They have robust and mature comp plans. And for those, they will use Workday or SuccessFactors usually as their HCM system. And outside of that, they have easily up to 7 or 9 other apps that they use.
Yeah, not surprised.
That's quite a lot.
Not surprised. Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So just getting back to the next piece, ADP also did some new generative AI capabilities into Roll. Roll, as you may or may not know, is a very down-market payroll solution in the U.S. That is AI and NLP enabled, so you can actually have a conversation with the solution and run your payroll. So they brought some more capabilities into that, right? Some more guidance, leveraging some of its data set, as well as a bit more proactive push of reminders, deadlines, nudges, that sort of thing. But what I think the bigger story here is that they are planning to roll this out in Europe this fall, and that will become more available globally. So it's interesting to see that we're getting more Gen AI in the news, and I think we're going to have plenty. So just buckle up. Payslip, right? You guys were in the news. I was reading just Friday, Fidelma, the blog I actually shared where you guys were explaining sort of the next phase of your AI infusion in your platform. That's going to bring more automation, certainly more real-time insights, and absolutely automate those arduous reconciliations. So, very excited to see you guys leveling up your global payroll control center. But along that lines, Fidelma, what's your point of view on generative AI in global payroll and the future of that?
I think some music has started. Hello?
No? Is it us? No, we're here.
Well, this is real time. I think one of the kids has just turned on something in the background. And
awesome. No worries. They're welcome. Have them come join us.
Yeah. We could have any kind of music. It could be a very dangerous thing.
Good.
I mean, this is like really payroll has been in catch up a lot over the last kind of 15 years across different technologies, even coming to the cloud. I think COVID, in fairness, kind of was a useful trigger to kind of ramp us out of on-prem software and into cloud. To get to the next stage for generative AI, there have been lots of initiatives taken in different companies. I know we were doing some talks in PayrollOrg on HR and AI over recent conferences with Joe there in BMW. In the States, they had built some tools. Now I think it's becoming a bit more generally available in the market, but it has some requirements or dependencies before you can really get into it. So for any AI tools that are being built, they need a basis of data or documents which have to be read. And there needs to be some structure or standard across the data and the documents to be read in order to kind of drive those tools to go and read them and to produce some kind of an insight or produce some sort of a generative suggestion to them. So what I would still see is that, like in Payslip, we are using AI now, as you mentioned, for our payroll reconciliation tool. So the way that works is we receive in a gross to net data set from the payroll provider in the local country. We receive in all versions of that over a payroll cycle. So there could be 2 versions or 5 versions, depending on how complicated the payroll is. And we receive them across all of the different countries. And so within Payslip, what we do is we standardize and ingest all of the data. And then the tools, because the data has been validated automatically, and consolidate it automatically into a standardized format, then the AI tools can read it and compare it against other KPIs or requirements that are needed. And so the payroll reconciliation report that we launched over the last month, our customers are hyper excited about it. What it means is that when the gross to net comes back into Payslip, it compares the inputs versus the outputs. What were the payroll changes that went out to the payroll provider? Were they all processed when they came back? What are the changes this month versus last month? All of those manual checks that payroll professionals all over the world spend time doing, and in the olden days used to print off
Yes.
rulers to read. That
Ticking
is
and
all
tying.
automated. And now, as a customer of Payslip, you just have to, you get an alert automatically generated to say, hey, Pete, good news, their gross to net is back and it has been reconciled against your inputs. And you just log in and it automatically produces a report to you so you can see the differences of the before and the after. And our customers are testifying that it's saving at least 2 hours of their review against each payroll that they're running. So if you have 17 payrolls, that's 34 hours, and it really relaxes a very congested time of work at this peak payroll time every single month. And it won't, the next question, it won't do them out of a job. Like, we're the strongest flexible people of payroll people, as you said. They're very trained, they're very expert, and not everybody can do it. What this does is it removes the manual cross-checking and the VLOOKUPing so that actually they can use their judgment and their expertise to evaluate the impact of what they're looking at in the report. So I think generative AI is really important for payroll. I think it will be the biggest liberation ever for global payroll people. But for you to have it and to build it, you need to have some of those building blocks in terms of data and document standardization and structure.
Yeah. Well said. I think it's very much a relief. And I think the augmentative nature and the insights that can be surfaced to help the practitioner do better, right? Have better outcomes is just, a breath of fresh air, for this profession. So very good. So look, that's our news this week. Lots there. Thank you, Fidelma, for your POV on all of those as well. And Julie, appreciate the updates on the benefits world. Let's talk a little bit about global payroll in context with what we heard in this recent survey that we did. So Payslip and the PayrollOrg teamed up for a survey that I worked with your team on, and we wanted to sample and get an understanding of what was going on in the market from just a technology perspective, a sentiment perspective, operational. Where are people focused? Where are people struggling? What are the opportunities? And I think some of the key takeaways, and I feel like I come away with this sadly every time we do one of these. I've worked on a number of these across the market. Is that payroll just isn't really getting to hit its full stride, I would say is a good analogy, right? They're getting it done. They're obviously supporting their businesses, but there's a lot of opportunity, and the organization is generally not tapping the value and the organizational agile capabilities that payroll can provide in its data. So was a little disappointed, but not surprised to see some of the findings that came out of that. Let me start maybe with this first one. I'd love to get your perspective, Fidelma, but also Julie. I want to know what you think. 64% of practitioners said their operations are currently unfit to support their strategic direction of their business. That means 2/3 of companies don't feel confident in their payroll to be able to support what they're trying to accomplish out there, and that's scary, right? I mean, that it just sounds like a competitive disadvantage, but what do you think about this, Fidelma? Is that a shock to you that many firms are struggling?
Well, I think, first of all, it was a really good participation rate from PayrollOrg. And what's nice is that having this result is representative across different industry verticals and people with global payroll across the different continents. In Payslip, when we talk to companies, like, in the end of the day, all of the companies who talk to Payslip about using our technology are running payroll by spreadsheets beforehand. So regardless who their payroll services provider is, because payroll goes down that question, fundamentally, what are the tools that they're using to run payroll? And it always comes back to Excel spreadsheets. So I always kind of say death to Excel spreadsheet, which isn't a great thing because I'm married to a man working for Microsoft. But, I told him it won't hit their sales a whole lot. But fundamentally, Excel spreadsheets are great for producing calculations and for quite useful functionality, but they weren't designed to run a global payroll operations system. And so I'm not surprised that global payroll operations people see that it's unfit for the strategic direction, because there's a maturity and there's a kind of an ascendancy of usefulness of data that you have to get to in order to provide strategic value. If you have at the bottom, global payroll people who are really competent, know what they're doing, and they're spending their time moving spreadsheets around and doing VLOOKUPs to compile a data set, then that is time that they are not spending analyzing what the story that the data can tell, either directly or using AI tools, and then feeding that story into their strategic leaders. And so their system will fundamentally let them down in enabling them to provide the strategic input if they are caught up doing the manual work. So it kind of brings us back to the previous conversation where I think global payroll people need to stand strong and proud and demand for a citizen software that can automate those manual tasks so they can read the data in a way that provides a useful insight, and drive global payroll to provide that extra value to their business.
Yeah, absolutely. Julie, does this sort of resonate with what you see in your side of things?
Yeah, it definitely does. But I think for me, some of the key insights come from the way the question was framed, which is around, the global payroll operations themselves. And as all of us know, the operations is so much bigger than actually getting that right, is so much bigger than which tool or tools, which, local engines, how you put the managed services or internal around that. It's the handoffs and the experience that I think oftentimes get the short end of the stick here. So, everything from, the handoffs and the source information that needs to come across, that's bumpy. We know that's bumpy. Everything about, leaves, sometimes timekeeping, sometimes, executive compensation, a lot of those touch points in any single country are bumpy. And so the operations, really encompasses or embraces more than just the key nuts and bolts of running payroll or, escalating approvals. And so that doesn't strike me at all. And I think in order to really get at a sound or a healthy feeling global payroll operations, you can't just solve for the payroll component. You have to, look end to end to the touch points and the things that really make this quite bumpy, even in the best of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I go back to my whole competitive advantage thing. I think people have to look at organizations need to look at their payroll operating model in context with their human capital management strategy and make sure that it's actually going to be able to support that. Right. And I don't know that I feel like payroll just gets drug along sometimes, right, as just this afterthought. And I wish it was more of a pre-thought, I guess you could say. So, a lot of opportunity.
Or you start to think of it as an island, right? When you're a payroll practitioner, you're trying to solve for payroll, then you're trying to solve for global payroll, and that's wonderful. But you risk putting yourself in a situation like with the benefits mindset, which is, well, I'm going to solve for benefits, and I have my delivery model, and I have my contact center or inquiry support channels, and I have my this and my that, and the next thing you know, it's difficult to look at benefits as anything but an island to the HR, the overall HR delivery model and HR delivery experience. And so at a certain point in time, you can work your synergies so far in an island that you're really, not a well-greased machine with the rest of the HR function or payroll or finance function, right? You become a little bit isolated.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Just looking further here, some of the operational challenges, they weren't terribly surprising to me, right? Compliance obviously bubbled up. That always does. Data and process visibility across countries makes total sense, right? If you don't have the tech, how are you going to manage all of these things in sort of in harmony, right? I said orchestration earlier today, but really, how do you orchestrate all that? And then, of course, just managing so many vendors globally. I think that a lot of firms, they wake up and they find themselves operating with this sort of spaghetti bowl of things that are making payroll tick and making payroll happen, but they're not really able to necessarily command all of that in a streamlined way and access data and do the things that they need to do at a global level. So lots of opportunities out there, I think, from the technology. And I want to leave this subject with one piece. I don't know if you saw this recently, but I think someone posted this. It was a quote by Thomas Otter, If you don't know Thomas, he's a thought leader and strategic advisor with Acadian. And Fidelma, I think you'll appreciate this. He said, and you know Tom, right? I believe,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken. He said, it's completely weird that we have a system responsible for trillions and trillions of euros per year going through our organizations, and we are essentially using technologies that are 30 years old. And it's absolutely true. It's literally payroll in a in a meme. And I think that it's sad, right? That you've got these incredibly vital operational operations, if you will, in your organization that are moving the economy, around, and fundamentally being done on sometimes spreadsheets, right? I mean, I've literally had in-country, smaller regional providers tell me that's their biggest competition is Excel. And that just sounds crazy today with all the technology we have available. So would love to see it get into the hands of every practitioner. Another thing that really I thought was surprising, but also kind of sort of breaks my heart is 79% of practitioners said they're stressed, they're frustrated, and they're underserved by technology, and largely still perceived as a back office function in their organizations. I don't know. I'll open this up to either of you. What is it going to take for people to take payroll seriously as it should, and actually help them level up, right? Champion their success. Like, what is it going to take? I don't know. Julie, Fidelma, what do you guys think? Ladies think?
Well, one of the first things that comes to my mind is just, I would imagine if the number here is 79% are still frustrated, a fair number of the folks that provided that response have had new stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's new technology, new processes, new workflows, new, ICPs, whatever it is, the stress and frustration that they feel I don't assume that it's just that they're not getting anything new or different. And so a part of that, there's a part of me that says there's change management issues. We know that when folks try to put in some newer, better stuff, they don't really do themselves a service and think about, how the world envision a better world.
Yeah.
And better processes. And so I imagine that there's just some big combination of factors in there that says, yeah, sure, there are some folks who are stressed because, there's nothing new going and it's underinvested. It always has been. That's a component of that. But there also has to be, some significant component of that sentiment that is getting new stuff or, new processes and either doesn't know how to embrace them, doesn't trust them, and continues to, do a whole lot of things off to the side. And, there's probably a number of things happening there, but it can't just be that 80% of folks are not getting anything new, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I also think there's, we did a whole episode on, investing in transformation and being invested. And I think that in my work and the firms that I study that have the most mature and value enabling payroll operations always have a very rich culture that provides them a champion, an executive champions that are really making sure that payroll is prioritized within their operating model and their HR strategy. So I think there's a lot to that, right? Culturally, but also, so it's investing and being invested that I think is definitely critical. But anything to add to that, Fidelma?
Yeah, I would agree with what both you and Julie said there. I think I'd kind of look at it from two angles. On Julie's point about like, have they been through technology investment or not, and is it working or not? I agree. I think what we see, I think you did some research a few years ago, Pete, where it said that, global payroll technology investment kind of is a natural downstream investment after the HCM investment. And we would definitely see that happen. So we see with a lot of customers on Workday, they've decided to go into the cloud for HR. They've looked at all the software solutions. They implement Workday. And when you're implementing any global platform for HCM, it's a huge, big project and it can take several years across different countries. And the decisions, a bit like you said earlier, that there's, there's somebody in charge of benefits and somebody in charge of this and somebody in charge of that. The HCM choice and design doesn't always consider some of the global payroll requirements, because global payroll is downstream and is subsequent, whereas actually it really needs to be considered in parallel with the implementation of Workday, because the data model design in Workday is very important and feeds into the ease or non-ease of the integration with the PG and with the different data flows in the Workday reports. So I think firstly I'd say that it needs to be a parallel project when the HCM is being considered and the other tools. And in terms of the leader, I absolutely agree with you, Pete. It needs to have some kind of an executive visionary and advocate, because what we see with global payroll leaders is, no global payroll team is ever going to say that they're correctly resourced. They're always kind of stretched in one direction or the other. Even if they're resourced correctly at a point in time, the company starts to scale, things begin to change. So there's always this piece of work where 2 weeks of every month is all consuming for the global payroll team and running the payroll. And then there's the post accounting interfaces. There might a maximum be 1 week available for a project in any kind of operational team. So it's very difficult for anybody within the operational team, even the leader, to be the advocate, because they're actually caught up 70 to 80% of their time on actual running the operation of it. So you need to have somebody that they roll up to, who has the understanding of the payroll complexity, but has the voice and the influencing capability at a different level to be able to say, and now it's time that we jump. The business is jumping from 5 countries to 15. The business is jumping from 1,000 people outside the US to 5,000. We actually need to move from the Volkswagen Golf into the BMW 3 Series here. We need a big jump here somewhere. And that's not always in place. And we can see that lacking sometimes. It is hard for the business casing. It's very hard for payroll people then to have the time to put together the business casing for the investment, because they have very limited time available.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a topic that's really interesting to me. And it's something that just a sort of sneak peek here. I am in talks with the PayrollOrg to figure out how we can create some sort of a sentiment survey and analysis of the payroll community, because I think there's a danger of this, right? Like just being stressed and frustrated and feeling like you're not valued, and that the function is just seen as sort of less than. It's a systemic problem in payroll. I mean, I could give you thousands of examples in as a payroll practitioner and outside as a payroll practitioner, just promoting this industry and the good of the industry. And this is something that, it really, we need to change this, because if payroll doesn't happen, the economy doesn't happen. There's a lot of things that don't happen without payroll. So would love to see them feel better. And the reality of it is, listen, payroll hasn't been immune. You see this probably in your conversations, Julie. I'm sure you do, Fidelma. Organizations are fundamentally losing talent in every area, and payroll has not been immune to that. And payroll has always been a hard place to recruit into, right? None of us aspired to grow up to be in payroll. We've thankfully landed here. We've stayed here. I say that often, but how do you get young people coming, young career professionals coming into the industry now to look at payroll when all you're hearing is the media saying, "Oh, it's going away because of AI." And you're seeing this, right? I mean, what's the motivator to go into that world? And that's what scares me, is that we're not going to have enough people willing to do that. So,
well, honestly, there's a real wellness impact. I'm not surprised some people leave. Like, I totally agree with you. Firstly, I think what do we do about it? I think is vital that PayrollOrg, influencers like yourself, Pete, and your organization, continue to shout loud about what the industry needs, because it's independent of any one company or service provider. So I think that's your role is really vital. And I think within a company, what we see is that it's very difficult sometimes for payroll people to build a business case for automation, when actually the main benefit is that they're not working 17 hours a day. They actually get to work a normal, maybe not 17, but like 12 hours a day. So we would always see that people are working at really extended times of the day before they implement Payslip. We would also see that gets reduced back to a normal day. They would talk to us about how they miss, kids' recitals, and their health and their wellness gets impacted. And younger people coming into the workforce aren't going to accept that. They see wellness as being core to their requirements. They are also digital first. So they have expectations to come into a workplace where there is a process that they can understand. There are tools to help do that. They can provide strategic value, and they're not going to go backwards into moving spreadsheets around the place and doing VLOOKUPs. So if Global Payroll doesn't get the investment that it needs so that people have the full operational system as Julie outlined, and all the tools and the processes and the support and the teams so that they can do a fulfilling day but actually leave and go home, then the talent restriction will continue. Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed. Julie, do you see or sense any of this on your side of the coin?
Yeah, I think, for sure. I think part of the difficulty is just diagnosing it, right? And then trying to ascribe, factors to what it is that needs to happen in order to make it better. And, everyone has thoughts about what that is, whether it's even leadership, as Fidelma was saying earlier, you can have that strategic vision and that strategic leadership at the top. Sometimes that's missing, but oftentimes you have that at the top, but you don't have any muscle at the local level to exact changes that need to happen.
Yes.
Right. So there's so much from a stakeholder perspective that is so much more complex between finance and HR and operations and shared services, if that's an organization, that I think it's very difficult to kind of follow the trail and figure out not only what needs to happen, but where engagement needs to be to drive results.
Yeah.
And that is just, that's something that is a huge struggle because we are so complex from a stakeholder perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And every organization is different, right? So the dynamics are even more complex for each one of them. So yeah. Okay, well, good. Look, let's go to talk our last couple data points here. I wanted to hit on, and then we can wrap up. Look, half of practitioners, or almost half, said they see data automation and automated workflows as a key priority to advancing their operational capability. Right, proactively finding detection and detecting errors, which I know, we talked about earlier, that AI is being a huge help for really automating those pre-payroll data inputs and bringing automation to be more of a norm within the platform. And then, of course, access to analytics, right? It's a top need, right? More companies want that globally consolidated, real-time, insightful payroll data that they can actually take, pair with other things, and make real-time decisions for. So, I mean, what do you think here, Fidelma? I know you've got some obviously strong opinions about what automation can do, but half the practitioners out there in the marketplace are operating in a very manual way, and unfortunately, you gotta wonder. I would love to know, there's probably X trillions of dollars in the world's managed through payroll. What percentage of it is actually in error every week? Either to the good of the employee or the detriment of the business, right? Or either, right? It's got to be it's got to be a huge dollar leakage, I would imagine, globally. But very unfortunate.
We had a shocking phone conversation with a company recently who's not yet one of our clients, but I'd say will be soon after this.
Yeah.
And they have 30,000 people on their payroll, and they have a lot of manual work going on. And they said that they know that they have 1,000 people, 1,000 of the 30,000, every month, who emailed them to say they got underpaid.
Oh, okay? My.
Every month. And what he was worried about was that he doesn't have 1,000 people telling him they were overpaid. So he said, what is going on in this? So we'll hopefully be solving that pretty soon. Yeah, I mean, I think when we talked before about all the operations pieces, really, we were talking about a process and workflow and automating that. That's to me, that's kind of like a horizontal question. You can't really get really good reporting that provides insights and dashboards and analytics without solving the data question. And so, like in Payslip, we fundamentally believe that global payroll will always have diverse data sets, because payroll in every country will always be unique, and that's only going to continue to grow and diverge. And so the challenge that we put to ourselves to solve was, how do you take continuously increasing and diverging data sets over time and over countries and help standardize them into one common basically data language and format and structure. And once you have that, then you can produce analytics. And that's what we did with our unified data model in Payslip. And so I think for all global payroll people, that is really the question. And you you can't harmonize the data set if you have different spreadsheets returning from different countries with different data elements. And that's always the question. So analytics is absolutely a requirement. In Payslip, that was the approach in which we did that by harmonizing the data set. And fundamentally, the question I asked in 2016, way back at the PayrollOrg course that I did, I was talking to different leaders in global payroll, and I said, well, what do you want your system to do and your global payroll to provide to you in terms of analytics that you don't have? And a great answer I got from Christopher LaRoche, who's in Poly now, but was in Autodesk at the time. And he said, I want a multi-country comparative report at pay element level. I said, okay, tell me that again. I'll write that down. And I went straight back to the developers. I said, regardless of what we do, we need a multi-country comparative report at pay element level. It became like a tongue twister, but that's what you do. And you actually have to work out how to get where if you have a luncheon voucher in Canada and church tax in Germany, how do they relate to each other in a report so that in the end you can go back and say, here's the optional extra employer costs. Here are the mandatory extra employer costs. And the question I always say to CFOs is, if your CTO comes in and says, we have 5 software development centers in the world in 5 different countries, purely from a cost plus perspective, which center should I set, which country should I set up my next center in? Yeah. How long does it take you as a CFO to get that report together to be able to compare the cost plus in each of the different countries? And if it takes you more than 5 minutes, well, then you haven't harmonized your data system. And the reality is most CFOs don't know because they feed it into somebody in global payroll. And then people get busy mashing spreadsheets together for several days or a week to actually get the result back to them. And that is a service that global payroll people do not want to be providing into the finance team. They want a totally different service that provides real strategic insight.
Yeah, that's a use case I know I've lived. I remember, operating, this is years ago now, operating on the latest on-premise solution in a Fortune, 100 organization, and the dread of having the controller or the CFO ask for a report on a Monday morning was awful, right? Because I knew the work it took my team to prepare those reports. And you're absolutely right. We just like everything in payroll, we just sort of pull the rabbit out of the hat and it looks like magic. But the reality is we were really doing a lot of heavy lifting, and who knows if we were perfect, right? I mean, we're human beings moving data from spreadsheet to spreadsheet. It's just not what payrolls should be doing, right? And I think that I get excited when I sit and think about analytics and AI and error detection, because I think about all the things I could have done, all the little problems we had that we wanted to solve, but we just couldn't because of bandwidth or, whatever. So yeah, I think this is very refreshing. And this is where I think the technology is going to be such an uplift and an augmentation to the payroll practitioner, and hopefully provide that value back to the business. So, anything to add, Julie?
Yeah, I'm having one of my practitioner sarcastic moments over here in my head,
please.
because it's fun sometimes, and we have to have a little bit of counterpoint. But there's a part of me that says, there are 2 things that came to mind as you guys were talking, and one is, with nearly half wanting priority in data automation and replacing spreadsheets, and my first thought is, most folks that are asking for that, a great many payroll practitioners that are asking for that, aren't working with a system or technology that even validates data field for out of range. Like, there's just basic data validation that is far shy of automation and some of the complex things that we know there's a demand for in the market now. I mean, it is just basic stuff that isn't there, and is falls into that data automation, I think, category when you're using, old tools and old things. So that popped into my head. The other thing that I thought was interesting is, and Fidelma, you'll be able to confirm or not, but no matter how many folks are looking at new tools, as clients look at new tools, they say they want analytics, they say they want these systems that will bring things together. Have you ever had a client that didn't want to know, can they export things to Excel? I'm positive not.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, they still always ask you that question. And I have a slide that I made. I think I used it at the PayrollOrg talk I gave, which actually has Excel on a gravestone. God forgive me for doing that. But they still do always ask. And it's kind of like it's more like a crutch. And actually we usually do have to say, yes, you can, but you'll find you don't need to. And then we always talk to customers after we implement Payslip and they say, you were absolutely right. We expected we'd always want to download things, but now we don't. And we say to them, once you have your payroll set up on Payslip, it becomes a closed system because all the data is flowing directly in from your source systems, your Workday or your other source systems out to your payroll providers and back in and out to your accounting. And actually they don't use email and spreadsheets anymore outside of the system, which sounds like a fantastical land for some people who are busy struggling with spreadsheets, but that's actually testified by our customers like the Databricks and the Olympus and the Intuitive Surgical or EQT. So yes, they still ask it. It's a dependency.
I
It's
think
an
it would be.
addiction.
I think it would be great for folks that are thinking about, oh wow, I'd like to imagine a world where I get out of replacing the manual spreadsheets to really be able to look and say, what are you using those for? If you're still using those for some of the things, that are checking or formatting or things that the tool should be taking care of, then that's one problem, right? That's one area of improvement to target. Are you using them? The other thing I see and I think is legitimate is, you might need to export some things because sometimes connecting things and making them talk properly to each other is far more of a hassle than it really should be. And so that to me is a different use case, right? And a different way and a different thing to go about doing in order to replace the use of manual spreadsheets and automated workflows. And connecting things can be very complicated in this industry. So just being able to parse in and, kind of deep dive into that and figure out what are the nuts and bolts that, what's the range of things that are happening that would account for that, to me is fascinating.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great conversation. This has been fantastic. Fidelma, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it and love your insights. And you're always welcome to come back on the show.
Oh, yeah. Great to be here. And thanks to yourself and Julie. Great news listing there. So keep us all on top of developments because there's so many different things happening across the different companies in the market. It's great to keep on top of them. Yes.
Stay close. We like to keep you updated on what's going on in the market from the 10,000 foot view in my world and down on the ground with Julie. So yes, please do. So look, Fidelma, when we wrap up, we always like to share where can we connect with you? What can we look for? Are you going to be at any conferences, any new articles, anything like that? Where can we find you? Where can folks connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So our website in Payslip is payslip.com. So you're welcome to follow our blog pieces there and all of our white papers, including the ones here that we've done with you, Pete. On LinkedIn, we publish a lot through that as well, both the Payslip LinkedIn page and my own. I'm delighted if you connect with me directly through LinkedIn. Happy to message there. And then, yes, we're strong participants in the PayrollOrg conferences every May. And I'm looking forward to the one next year in Nashville. Thank you. I was about to say Nebraska, but that's wrong. So Nashville. And then also in September, we're going to Workday Rising, which is over in San Francisco. That's the next one in the gallery. So really looking forward to Workday Rising. Are you going to that, Pete and Julie?
I will be the one in Europe. I'm planning to make the one in Spain. I don't think I'll be at the US one. So
so I'm going to Barcelona as well. Yeah, that's in November. So that's
very good.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to all of those. Yeah.
Yes, and I will make sure in the show description to share all of your contact information, Fidelma, as well as a link to the report that folks can access. Julie, what about you? Where are you going to be? What's going on in your world?
Yeah, and sadly, Fidelma, I don't think we'll cross paths at Rising. It's been on my maybe list for a while, but there's an awful lot that happens on the West Coast in the fall, of course. And I will have just afterwards be heading probably to HR Tech and some other events. I'm in Houston today. I think you guys heard me say at the beginning, I'm melting. It's absolutely sweltering here. I may be back another time or two. So having a lot of fun working hands-on with clients who are going through big transformations. And Las Vegas, actually, I know, Pete, you know that I attend the Shared Services and Outsourcing Week. I usually speak there with a few seasoned shared service leaders or HR operational folks. And that'll be the week of the 14th of September. So be in Vegas for that. And I always gather as many folks that are attending that event as possible to get together and network as a part of either some dinner or some side conversations. And so if anyone is listening and planning on being there, just reach out. And I do a lot of connecting of peers at those events. So excited about that.
Yes, very good. You brought up, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Fidelma.
No, sorry, I'll check if we're attending that. I know we did last year and it was a great event. So I'll just check. I do think now that I'm thinking of it, we have California Payroll Conference coming up with PayrollOrg as well in September. Is that correct, Pete? Do you remember?
I think I'd have to check. They're normally September, October, I think is when those are. So you're right around there. I attended that one last year. So yeah, I'm doing the Atlanta one myself this year. And trying to speak at a different one of those. I love that you're doing that because I think that those regional conferences, we've talked about this on the show, are very, very important to the practitioner community. Yeah. They're self-run, they're self-funded, they need the input. And I think there's a lot of bang for the buck that vendors can get out of being a part of that community. So kudos to you guys for being involved in that, those regional events. There's 20 plus of those, by the way, around the country that you can get involved in if you're a vendor.
Yeah.
How about you, Pete?
Oops, sorry, Julie, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to change the topic and make sure Pete sounded off too, but I think you guys weren't done yet.
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say, the only thing I was going to add was HR Tech is a great point. Yeah, I will definitely be at HR Tech. I'm actually going to be doing some of the tech stage. There's a chat sessions that are going to go on. I'm going to lead the one on global payroll and EOR at that. So, yeah, and I know you guys are going to be there, Fidelma, as well.
That's right. Yeah, some of my colleagues are going to HR Tech and led by our good colleague, Mary Holland, who everybody in PayrollOrg will know.
Yes.
And Mary's based in California. So
Global Payroll Mary.
Yeah, she's our global payroll evangelist. We brought her out of the closet, and well, she wasn't really in a closet, but she has a lot of good things to say about global payroll experience with her experience. So she'll be at HR Tech with you, Pete, and I think she's also leading our charge at the awesome. California Payroll Conference.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, I have, as usual, a chock full pipeline here. You can certainly find the Payslip report, the Global Payroll Report. I'll share the link. You can also find it on my social media. I've also published a report recently with Atlas HXM, the EOR firm. We've done a 2023 Global EOR report that's culminated a number of different perspectives in that. So I'd love if you'd check that out. It's a really great one that I enjoyed producing. And I'm also going to produce an article out of that one. So look for that soon. You can also head over to GxTAdvisors.com for my new blog on earned wage access. And in that blog, you can see a call to action for the thought leadership series that I am doing with Daily Pay as part of the Source podcast, where I've been interviewing business leaders around the ecosystem for their sort of perspectives on what on-demand pay and earned wage access has done for their organizations, and really helping break down some of these myths that prevent companies from engaging modern solutions like that. So lots of content there. You'll see 3 or 4 conversations I did at PayCon, as you mentioned, in Denver, Fidelma. We recorded those there live. It's a little bit loud in the background, but it came out really great. And there's some great conversations on that. So check it out. We've got industry leaders, practitioners, HR, payroll, you name it. So really, really fun conversations that I'm having. And a lot of impact that I think folks would be surprised by in the earned wage access world. It's negligible to payroll and immensely impactful to the talent side of the business. So, give that a look and just see what you learn. But yeah, thank you so much again, Fidelma, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you. And we'll see you around, and hopefully we'll get to connect on the road.
Great. See you then.
Right. Thanks,
Julie.
everyone.
Thanks, Pete.